The meeting is officially being recorded now. Everybody, best behaviors, hopefully going forth, and we'll make something happen today. I will give a brief bit of information, but I think most of you guys know me. New planner here for Baltimore County in District 2, and found out this is one of the best districts to be in, and it seems that way so far. So I hope it stays that way, and I hope we get some sort of action coming from all this. I don't want to let you guys down and feel like I've got just a wealth of opportunity in front of me, and I don't want to trip and ruin it all. With that said, I don't know if you guys normally go around the room, but I think everybody's pretty familiar here. Nothing really to it. Jen, I appreciate you giving us a shout out. We were trying to figure out who you were earlier, so thank you for that. Um, just to save everybody's time and save their evening, hopefully maybe can get back to dinner, their family there. I'll just go ahead and start with the summary of the grants from what we discussed early in June. And really the difficulties we faced on that, I wouldn't say it was a difficulty, it's just the challenge of trying to find out who's going to be sort of the representative for PrEP, if PrEP wants to become a 501c3, if that's something they want to consider, really trying to align the goals with the objections of PrEP. Who's the organization that we would trust to be our sort of ombudsman of grant writing and taking the toll on what we want to go forth with. So with that, we've kind of missed, oh, I'm sorry. Oh. So with that, we kind of missed a deadline for a lot of the ones. We've got July 13th, I believe, was the cutoff. So if anything, what we can do now is sort of focus on, all right, so deadlines aside, even if there was no deadline at all, if we could apply for a grant, how do we do that and what items do we want to focus on? So most of you already know you had a task of figuring out within your subcommittees 2 priorities, maybe 3, that could easily be accomplished, I won't say easily, but can be accomplished short term with the funds we do have. So we had discussed having the organization committee, sort of, I don't want to throw you guys out on the boat first, but just to have you guys start us off, since that way, whatever you say going forth, sort of how we budget, how we track and focus on these objectives, it would come from the guidance of how to run within our subcommittee, so to speak. And I don't know if you guys wanted to begin at all, but from after the organization subcommittee says their sort of spiel, I mean, anybody else can kind of jump in. There's no sort of hierarchy from there. We just wanted to get the organization's thoughts out first, and hopefully the rest of the subcommittees will follow through with the same sort of line of thinking. So I don't know if anybody wants to jump in from organization, or if I've missed something, feel free to jump in, anybody.
Yeah, Jacob, I can give the recommendations from the organization subcommittee unless anybody has something to say first.
Go ahead, Larry. Wait for you.
Okay, and Michelle, go ahead and chime in if you want to add anything. So because, of course, our work cuts across all the different subcommittees and we're not focused on specific projects, we came up with a list of recommendations. And most of these are, we, of course, didn't come up with a full governance plan or anything like that. But I'll just go through the list, and I can email this out to everybody as well. It's probably a moot point at this point, but in terms of the Bernier Community Legacy funding, we definitely recommend that we hold off on those grant applications. That'll give us time to do some more investigation about fiscal sponsorship versus 501c3 status. It didn't make much sense to us to try to rush into something that quickly. We believe that it would be a good idea to develop an overall budget to implement all aspects of the PrEP. Of course, not everything's completely worked out, all the details, but it would be nice to do sort of a larger general budget with as much detail as we can. So as we're looking at what the priorities are for the entire PrEP and where we're going, we can get a better sense of where things fit and what things cost, not just priority wise, but what can we accomplish short term and long term based on funding that's available. We talked about using the community legacy application that was already submitted by the chamber and the county as a starting point for this PrEP budget and as a guide to spending the $120K in the county's FY22 budget. So it's not that we would have to be beholden to that, but a whole lot of work was already done by the chamber and the county putting together that community legacy application, which includes streetscaping and a lot of other projects that are aligned with what's in the PrAP. So we figured why reinvent the wheel and at least take a look at that piece and consider that as we're moving forward with the planning prioritization. A couple others, and this kind of, now I think this is a moot point too. We talked about inviting members of each subcommittee to talk about their top priorities for the 120K. I mean, we're doing that tonight, but we were specifically looking at that 120K we have right now, and how we want to spend that down over the next however long. Plus, Michelle knows the numbers better than I do, but we've also got FY23 money budgeted. So it's not a matter of going after grants for that money. It's ready and waiting, so to speak. And then finally, while prioritizing short-term and long-term projects in each subcommittee, which folks have done already to some degree, but then having the Oversight Committee vote on the prioritization for short and long-term projects across the committees. So that's something we have to explore, you know, if there's buy-in for the general sense of these governance policies or what have you, we have to really work out. We can work on recommendations as a prioritization subcommittee, but of course the Oversight Committee is going to have to finalize how we manage these, you know, priorities across the committees, funding, short-term, long-term, and then there's other questions to consider, which we can share later on, but balancing the interests of the business community with the interest of community groups on the Oversight Committee. We prioritize the investment of time and funding across the 3 geographic areas and across the subcommittees. And then how do we work with the chamber to continue engaging businesses and property owners in this process? So I downloaded a whole lot. We don't have the answers, but I think we definitely need to be able to step back and look at the bigger picture, short-term and long-term, in terms of the money that's available, the money we'd like to go for, what it would cost, at least rough estimate as close as we can get it in terms of, you know, what would it cost to implement everything and whatever everything is. And then again, using what we already have as a starting point, of course, the PrAP itself, but also the district study. And like I said, the community legacy application is sort of a starting point. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Larry, thank you. That I appreciate you giving us that sort of upfront of how we're going to go from here, because I thought that would definitely help guide us in decision making. So I appreciate what you guys in the organization subcommittee are doing. I don't want to interrupt if anybody has any questions, but I was going to say that whoever's ready to give out those priorities with what we have, go right ahead.
Jacob.
Yeah.
We're going to recognize hands just to make sure we understand the process going forward. I just clicked on a hand, so I don't know.
Okay, sure.
Okay, fair enough. I guess I have one comment and a question regarding Larry's great report. First of all, I was glad to hear Larry reiterate that the Oversight Committee, this group, as legislatively required in the legislation adopted by the County Council in December, will be the one making finalized decisions regarding what action is actually taken to implement various aspects of the plan. So that's a great step. The question I have, maybe Larry or someone else can chime in, is regarding the legacy grant, the 120,000. What has been decided on exactly how to use that money, if any?
That's what this meeting, that's what this group is here to decide, I thought.
I just heard him said it's been decided. So
sorry, let me clarify. The community legacy grant was declined. The 120K is separate from the community legacy grant.
Okay, sorry for the, okay, so the 120K, for lack of a better label, the 120K, how is that going to be used, if you got some specifics?
So that's county budgeted, and Michelle, can you speak to that? Because I think that's what we're deciding, correct?
Yeah, I know, because Josephine, we were talking about this earlier, not to confuse anyone, because there's the current round is open for these community legacy funds now, and I think the group has decided we're not organized, we're not ready to apply for them now. Okay. But what had happened in the past was the chamber worked closely with the planning department and submitted an application for projects under community legacy funds. The application was not approved by the state, but the county used the projects listed and the budget that they had proposed in that application to create the funding in the current fiscal year for Pikesville revitalization. And as Josephine has previously stated, out of that, I think 230,
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
yeah, 1,000.
35.
Go
Yeah.
slow. Hold on. Stop
Has-
over talking. Just go slow, please. Because
Okay,
numbers
so
get confusing.
out of that 230,000 that was allocated in the current fiscal year, the new trash cans and benches, the benches have gone in, the trash cans I think are
There we
still
go.
under production. That money has been spent. And that leaves us with, I think, 150, around 150,000.
Yeah.
Just
Now
around.
we got it. So,
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
so just to keep the numbers straight,
Yeah.
you're spending 120 on a variety of different trash cans, et cetera, and there's 150 left in that funding, correct?
Hold on a second. I'm just seeing the previous presentation. So the CIP funds is 235K. And approximately $151,000 remaining after spending for benches and trash cans.
Got it.
And then county allocated funds for FY 2023 is approximately 100K. So
Got it.
what Larry and Michelle are saying is the community legacy application, which was declined for something done previously in the past year through the chamber. So Larry is saying that the projects are already identified, but the funds were declined through the community legacy application. So he's trying to say that since we have the identified projects, we can work with the subcommittees and work to see the PrEP actions and goals to see if that aligns with the past real applications which is already put in. Am I right, Larry, or no?
Yes, as I was saying, I think it's a good starting point, and like you said, does it align with the PrEP? We're not recommending from the organization committee that we have to implement what's in the community legacy application, but I think it only makes sense to at least take a hard look at a deep look at that to see if we want to fulfill that.
I don't know about anybody else, but I am very confused about the nomenclature and the labeling of which pot of money is which. I don't know if anybody else is confused.
I'm just gonna say, I mean, I'd say for getting the money aside, there's money available. I mean, just for the sake of the meeting, just that we have the funds available, and right now, I believe what we're trying to do is at least get something done with whatever money's available. It could be $1 million, it could be $1.
No. The money is important. There's only two
And the money
questions.
is
How
important,
much?
but what's important right now is making sure we prioritize what to do with that money. Because it's one thing to have it and not do it and argue about where it's coming from, but we've got to sort of figure out what the next steps is. So what we would like to see. And Deb, I see your hand up here. I'm sorry, I've been trying to get to you there. What would you like to say here or chime in on it?
Two quick questions. One, is there any reason that the chamber isn't resubmitting that grant for this year's community legacy?
Is Beth here? I guess I don't even see
Yeah.
Beth here. All right.
Now for this year, that's the meeting we had with the subcommittee chairs, right? Like, so that was the decision.
Correct, but I'm asking why would Beth be open to doing it herself, just like she did it last year? Just a thought that just popped up in my mind.
I think, I mean, right, it's really not to speak with her, for her, but planning, actually, Bill Skibinski did a really heavy lift, actually, with the application process. You know, Beth certainly got the quotes and worked with local businesses, but Bill did a lot of the application writing. And so we weren't able to come to that agreement for this year's application that planning could do as much of as a heavy lift. So it just didn't seem like it would work.
Okay, and then my second question is, can we define short-term and long-term in terms of months? So while we're talking about, Larry was saying to define the two, it's short-term 18 to 24 months, is it 12 to 20,
I think that's work that has yet to be done. I think we need to look at dig deeper into the plan to see what the projects are to really determine what short-term and long-term, maybe midterm,
Thanks.
I think that's where those
I would
costs are coming.
like to also mention that in the PrEP plan, there are goals and actions listed saying short-term and long-term with number of years. Whatever the committee and the subcommittees or whatever plans you are referring to, I would request you all to direct it to the action plan. That's the Bible guide we have to refer to, because that's
That is
the
exactly right.
directions we have to go to. So that
Right.
number of
But we're
years.
behind on that, Josephine. We're way behind. So we have to sort of relabel them. The things that were 21, 22 are, gone. So we probably should work on that.
Right.
Jacob, if I could.
Oh yeah, go right ahead. Go right
Well,
ahead. Matt.
I just want to see if we can keep it in order. So the chamber submitted a proposal regarding some kind of spending on some kind of money for some kind of grant. And this was in advance of us getting some kind of organizational structure in the Oversight Committee. The Oversight Committee, as legislatively outlined, is mandated, required to monitor, oversee, that's in the title, and implement the action plan. So can we anticipate a collaborative effort from the chamber to submit their proposals to the Oversight Committee for our review and comment? Okay.
I'm sorry. So your question is, do you want to know if chamber can commit to work with the subcommittees? Is that your question?
My question is, will we be assured that going forward, proposals by groups such as the chamber to submit for grants within the Pikesville Revitalization Action Plan legislatively approved will coordinate and collaborate and submit these kind of proposals to the Oversight Committee for our review?
I can speak for Beth, but Beth is also part of the oversight committee, and she is part of Larry's. I think she is part of marketing group, right? So that's the thing. Like there might be different entities within the PrEP, like Armory and different subcommittees or the chamber, but everyone is working towards the same goal to improve, to see something good happen to Pikesville. So Beth being also part of a different subcommittee within the PrEP committee,
Yeah.
I'm hoping that whatever actions are taken, it'll be discussed and it'll be towards the same goal, because you're all working towards the same goal. So
That is absolutely correct, Josephine. The county is going to give money to an entity to help revitalize Pikesville. That is under the purview of the Oversight Committee to oversee, monitor, and implement. I would suspect that if the county is going to give money to revitalize Pikesville, and it is in accordance with this revitalization plan, also in accordance with that revitalization plan is the role identified in the action plan of the Oversight Committee to in fact review, comment on that proposal that the county is giving money for.
Hi, this is Gune. If I may clarify something.
Oh, please do, Gone. How are you this evening? Glad you're on.
Okay, so the community legacy grant that Larry is mentioning, that was done last year. So this was done before the action plan was adopted by council. So since we already had a list of projects that was not awarded, organization thought, why not bring it back and try to fund something out of those projects?
Mhm.
So we did the same thing with another community, which is Liberty Road. They also put an application in, but they were not awarded. So the county did put some funding for Liberty Road and also for Pikesville. So the remaining of that money, 130, I think it is what you guys have right now. that you're trying to work or fund projects out of. But they
So I
have not,
I acknowledge that the application by the chamber was certainly done in advance of our getting together under the legislation. I just want to be assured that the county is going to ensure that entities like the chamber and others who have proposals to gain money from the county for the revitalization of Pikesville will present those proposals to the Oversight Committee. I think Deb Patterson has alluded to that as well, for our review and comment.
Well,
If you need to take this back, if you need to take this kind of suggestion back to somebody else, oh, well and good.
no, I'm gonna kind of touch on what you said something earlier with the bureaucratic method here on how things go. I think it sort of jumped through those hoops, if I can tell already, of so we didn't get the money, so the county's upfronted the money, or it's basically giving the money up front to say, all right, so since you didn't get it from the state, here, have at it.
That's fine. That's fine. I acknowledge that, Jacob.
Yeah, so this is what our role is right now. So there's the legislation's already happened. This is basically for us to decide right now is we've got this pot of money, how we want to proceed. So it seems like what we have from the organization side of things is Larry said we're going to budget and we're going to prioritize. Not first there yet. Oh, I see your hand there, Larry. I'll let you speak here, Larry. I just wanted to make sure we kind of get back on track and not worry too much about where this money's coming from, but what it's going to go forth, because we've got the authority right here. Everybody in this room, we're discussing it right now, and we're responsible. We're going to be accountable for what happens there.
That's very
If
well
I
said.
understand it
That's
all
very well
correctly.
said, Jacob. Thank you for that comment. That was an important comment you just made.
Yeah, if I'm understanding correct, I could be wrong here. It helps kind of being an outsider to things. But Larry, go ahead, and then Ruth, whatever you have to say, and Thomas as well.
You know, I'll withdraw my hand. I don't want to
Okay,
trouble
sorry,
that.
Larry, you saw it up. Ruth or Thomas, whoever.
Well, I just, I think that the structure now is we have the oversight committee and we have subcommittees. And Beth, for example, who represents the chamber, is sitting on one or two or a couple subcommittees, whatever. So if that subcommittee proposes, you know, we're marketing and the members of the marketing committee are Beth, so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so. And as a committee, we would like to request $10,000 to print flyers. That is the structure, I think, now for how it's going to happen. I don't think the chamber is going to be as a separate entity, for example, going after portions of this $120,000 without it running through this oversight committee. That's the way it's set up. So
Ruth, that's
unless
perfect.
I
Ruth, that's
misunderstand.
perfect. Ruth, that's perfect. Jacob, do you acknowledge that?
Yeah, absolutely. I know what Ruth's saying here.
I mean, it's not, I don't think it's a turf war.
Yeah, no.
Mm.
I think at the end of the day, we all want what's best.
I have not heard that statement yet, so that's perfect. Perfect.
Okay, good. So I just stated it, and we all are on the same page that this is that's what the oversight committee is for, is to be an umbrella to sort of be the gateway for all of these projects that are going to draw on this finite amount of money that we have right now.
And hopefully more if we can get more later for more projects. But thank you for that, Ruth. And Thomas, I've got one more.
How do you unraise your hand?
You just click it again.
Click of the hand thingy. The hand
Okay,
thingy.
got
You're good. You're all set.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Very quickly, I think I like the idea that there's a finite amount of money. The money that I am hearing about is 130,000 left over from the initial grant that the chamber obtained, and there's another 100,000 for the following fiscal year. So that's $230,000, of which I guess, Ruth, your comment is, well, if the chamber concurs, I'd like to hear that affirmatively that they move that money is going through this committee, and if that's correct, then that's perfect. So our job here, starting today, is to figure out what proposals we want to make for that $130,000, and I'm presuming I heard there's another $100,000 in the following fiscal year. So rather than sitting around worrying about the process, if you will, it's time to start looking for substantive projects that we can propose and then cost out. Otherwise, we're just beating our gums. Thank you.
Thomas, you are my kind of man. I love it already.
Please-
Well
Please call
spoken.
me Tom. Please call me Tom.
Tom, I
I don't answer
apologize.
to Thomas.
Tom, thank you.
Tom,
Jack,
Thomas or Tommy are off the topic.
all right, no, that I appreciate. That's perfect. So, Jack, I'm gonna get you, and then I don't know if infrastructure, economic, or streetscape wants to go next, but we'll get Jack's comment, and we'll see these two. Whoever subcommittee wants to go first, and hopefully we can kind of get a consensus from everybody's ideas. Because from what I've seen sitting on some, it seems like we should be able to get a through line on what to do with some of this money. But go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, I just think we need to be clear. I mean, we're talking about spending money that's been allocated to this. I think we need to be clear that the Chamber of Commerce does not work for this committee. And if they want to go out and get money for a project in Randallstown or a different project in Pikesville that goes around because they want to have an event, they don't have to bring it through us to approve it. They're operating in the same community we are, and we all need to work together, obviously, but they don't work for us.
Well said, Jack. Mel, I see you here. It's gonna be quick.
It's going to be quick.
Okay, because we've got a consensus here, and I kind of think I see where you guys
Again,
are coming, and
Tom's
go right ahead.
Tom's comments were perfect. Ruth's comments were perfect. Jack, I'll take issue. We are not asking them to work for us. The legislation clearly said, and we're not talking about an event here or an event there. That's perfectly fine. But any money that comes from the county for the revitalization of Pikesville is clearly stated in the legislation, needs to be overseen, monitored, and implemented through the Oversight Committee. It's a critical point.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a critical point. It's something.
Thanks for your acknowledgement, Jacob.
No. Thank you, Mel, for that point. That's it. I hope we've been tasked. We have this mighty responsibility right now, essentially, to do something with this money, and I think this is our opportunity to do it now. And I want to hear the other subcommittees, what actions they have, since we've got this huge responsibility now. We have this pot of money. How are we going to spend it? Other two priorities from any committee can step up: marketing as well too, economic vitality, infrastructure design, streetscape. Anybody go right ahead, and hopefully we can figure out where this money's going.
Kristen, go.
Kristen, yeah, I mean, I don't want to throw you on the spot. Kristen, Mel, I know, Mel, you've been chatting away. You got economic too. You can throw out your two concerns. I mean, anybody.
Oh,
Either one. I can go first, or Mel, do you want to go first? Doesn't matter to me.
Oh, Kristen.
All right.
Take it away, Kristen.
Go ahead, Kristen.
The streetscaping and design group met, and we went through all of our topics, came up with 3. First, an overwhelming was public art through Pikesville. The second was wayfinding signs and signage as art. Just kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone, makes more art, but it also solves the problem of wayfinding and signage issues with parking specifically. And then a 3, because it's just like, it's an easy little thing we can add on, is landscape installations. We already have a lot of planters and things like that. We think we can really pump it up with that. I did see Jacob's agenda, and I did come up with some quick guidelines. If you want me to go through those, or do you just want to kind of hear my 3 and then move on?
I mean, I think that's great, Kristen. If you want to go ahead and throw them out there, I was just trying to get essentially what are we going to do now? Like, so it's great we focused on these, and what's the next step going forward? So that's, if you want to share, please feel free to. If not, we can hear from infrastructure or economic vitality, because I think we had a pretty good game plan from design and streetscape. So you can share if you like. Go right ahead.
No, I think your agenda was great because we need kind of an outline now.
Mm-hmm.
So determine the next steps for the art projects. Murals or budgets for those, determine locations. We'll need permissions from the wall owners and business owners. Method of artist selection and the logistics of the installation, and then the actual installation. It's kind of similar with parking and wayfinding signage as art. Again, we need budgets. Determine and very clearly what the information is we're trying to parlay with these wayfinding pieces. Find locations and how many we're going to have. Again, permissions from nearest businesses, and that we might consult with you too, especially if it's on public sidewalk, how much permission, sometimes it could just be a blessing, but do we need like a legit, if we're in front of Mr. Chan's or something, do we need a real permission, even though we're just on the sidewalk? But we'll get into the weeds later. But again, logistics of implementation, artist selection and installation. Landscaping is budgets, determine locations. Do we have planters, pots? Do we have medians? Do we have strips already there? Consent and input from nearest business owners. Determine which plants to plant. We wanted to focus more on native plants and pollinators. Determine the maintenance needs of plants. We try to do something that's low maintenance, but at least have some sort of idea of what is required. And then the planting and the seeds. Now the landscaping, we're also going to work with infrastructure for that and the Baltimore, the Chamber of Commerce, because I know both kind of have some ideas going on, and even so we wanted to be cohesive and work together with that. And achievable objectives by next meeting would be divvy up tasks between our subcommittee. Determine locations. We can start the permissions process and get up some rough budget. And that's where
Kristen, that was amazing. That was perfect. Mel, did you have a comment? Your hand still up?
Not a comment, just going to be reporting for the Economic Viability Committee.
I had a real quick comment.
Sure, go right ahead, Ruth.
We talked about wayfinding, and I know that it's sort of become shorthand for finding, identifying parking. But when we discussed it, and I just want to make sure I plant the seed, in my opinion, wayfinding should also include, and maybe this comes from SHA and we don't have to be involved, but wayfinding should also include signage to help people navigate from north to south using Dericio Lane all the way to Naylor's Lane or Oak Road or whatever.
Wow.
Right now, if you don't know how to do it, you cannot do it. You have to be an insider who lives in Pikesville to know where to take a jog to the left,
wow,
jog to the right. I've been saying this for like 3 years now. I'm saying it again.
Can I chime in on that? That's wonderful.
Go right ahead,
Kristen,
Mel. You can
Kristen,
segue in your
Kristen,
there.
I'm going to try to tie this up with this comment that Ruth just made. This finding, for lack of a better descriptive term, finding of Dericio Lane as a bypass, lacking a better descriptive term.
It is a bypass.
Yeah, that was designed for. I understand, but you're right. Not enough people know about it. And Kristen, how do you see that? Because I was going to comment in reporting for the Economic Viability Committee with regard to murals, et cetera. And your idea of using wayfinding and parking direction signs, et cetera, using art to amplify the whole concept. How do you feel about, that's a hell of an idea, Ruth. I'm serious. To get people kind of in with artistically directed to Dericio Lane.
Absolutely. I think it's a fantastic idea. And that's part of the I'm glad you brought that up, Ruth, because exactly in that process for the wayfinding is determine what exactly information we are trying to convey. And one of them is use Doricio Lane. That exactly, you don't know it's there. But I think now I haven't thought of the actual logistics,
Yeah.
how the art will convey that. And that's what we gotta bring an artist, kind of have some brainstorming, but just the greater goal of what we're trying to achieve is that. And I think it's fantastic because it'll really utilize a lot of underutilized cool things that we have going on, just like the
Thank you for letting me share that, because it's.
Good combination.
Thank you.
Good
Appreciate
combination.
that
It's a
comment.
pet peeve of mine for years that we have this great business bypass for when it's appropriate, but people don't know it's there.
No, Ruth, I appreciate you sharing on that. And Neville, I know you'd had I don't know if we had really discussed that too much with SHA on getting signage. I don't know if it was specifically for Doricio Road, but I know it was something we talked about with them. I don't know if that was the exact road we'd want. I know it's crosswalks there, but I wasn't sure if that was the exact signage that infrastructure was wanting as well. Because this is the best part about it, is like it seems like all these projects, despite being in a subcommittee, we can make this through line of doing what you said, Mel, of doing the art, and Kristen doing the signs, and Ruth with your suggestions of making this project really come to reality here, with each committee kind of throwing in what they prioritize there. So, Neville, did we discuss guiding signs with SHI? I know we briefly touched on it, but I don't know if this is the same sort of direction.
We touched on it on the subject of the cycle paths. We need to be able to figure out how cyclists are going to be able to do shopping in the Pikesville area. And so as a result, we have one of the members of our committee, Jaron, is going to be looking into the cycle paths and accessibility. And this is something that we're going to bear in mind. And especially for them, they need to find a safe way to get to the store, to be able to park their bike in a bike rack. Or if they are actually coming to work, they'll actually probably put their bike in a parking area. And either way, we'll need to have signs for people, not just the cyclists, of course, but everybody. And I think the proposal to come up with artistic signs makes a really good deal of sense because, as Ruth mentioned, there are ways to get around Pikesville that are not familiar to people who are not in Pikesville. And so I think this makes sense.
It definitely would have helped me, Nevin. I just couldn't remember if there was some sort of guiding signs that we had talked about, and I don't know if it's this specific road or not. But I'm glad there's a bit of a consensus. Mel, were you going to go for the economic vitality now, or just another comment on the signs?
You're muted, Mel. Mel, you're.
Mel,
No, I
you
know.
got
All right,
it
there we
right
go. There we go.
Yeah, I got
missed-
you. I'm
I
clear.
missed my finger. So the Economic Vitality Committee met and came up with a unanimous vote on our two major priorities. And I'll try to be brief as possible. And if we note the action plan for the revitalization of Pikesville in the legislation goals 1F, 1G, and 1H, we've decided to kind of make them all one, so to speak, because they're all pretty much related and they all revolve around art. So we'd like to see that as our number one priority of what to explore, and certainly even utilizing some county funds to engage in that exploration would be helpful, let alone the final implementation of any art or events that take place. And so, develop and coordinate community-friendly events, identify locations where public art, murals, as has been mentioned by several people in this oversight committee. So we seem to have some agreement on what the focus might be, and giving special consideration to the armory is mentioned more than once in these three action items. So that's the first goal. And we think that if the mass of artwork, and this is where it's very important for me to convey, and I've understood it visiting many, many, many communities. If there's a critical enough mass of artwork, then it becomes a thing. It becomes a magnet. It becomes a brand. It becomes an identification that can, just by the artwork, transform the entire corridor. And this tying in of the parking signs, as Kristen, and now, as Ruth has suggested, even more distinctly directing folks to Dericio Lane, utilizing that artwork, and as Neville just mentioned, I mean, that's a perfect combination to try to gain this critical enough mass of artwork that it's truly a different community. The second goal that we focused on was 9F. 9F says, develop community redevelopment plan. Oops, sorry, read the wrong one, sorry. 9F, explore the development of retail-focused pedestrian walkway from the State Police Courtyard through Foley Lane. Without graphics, I think most of you are familiar with this concept. And if I could paint a visual picture without having the graphics that I do have, the visual picture is visualize that the frontage of the commercial properties on Reicherstown Road is what it is. It will most likely never be a pedestrian-friendly boulevard because of the scale of that road. That state road is the impediment. So that being said, now visualize a parallel pedestrian-friendly walkway from the State Police Courtyard all the way through the Giant, through Foley Lane, onto the Giant property, through First Watch, lined, perhaps mostly on both sides, with commercial venues. That takes in the library, that takes in Foley Lane, that takes in that little parking lot that's behind the cab stand, that takes in First Watch, and that takes in part of the Giant parking lot. What has to happen, now this is very long, this part of it is a lot, but visualize the results. You now have a pedestrian-friendly walkway, which is the modern, I think, Jacob, you'll probably verify it, and some of the other planners here. It is the modern approach to suburban, urban, however you want to call it, redevelopment, getting away from that car. But people need a place to park. There is space to construct parking facilities, structured parking, one or both ends of that promenade. We called it, in our original plan of 2016, we called it the Pikes Peak Promenade. And that is the modern planning development, is consolidate parking, put it in a structure. That's what happened in Bethesda. That's what happened in Silver Spring. That's what happened in numerous other suburban, urban, however you want to classify that, communities who are challenged. So what a developer can get for this is the county will front the money for the structured parking. The developer, the property owner, gets to develop increased amount of revenue producing rental property for other commercial ventures. So what you've accomplished is gaining increased investment. You've gaining an increased almost 2/3 of a mile, about a half a mile, of a pedestrian walkway lined with shops. So that's the two things that we think are, from an economic vitality committee, subcommittee standpoint, is the two focal points that we'd like to focus on.
Thank you for sharing that, Mel. I think that's terrific. The sort of parkway, walkway for service centers for pedestrian access is key long-term easily to have that community stay economically viable. That's
If just one last thing, I'm sorry, Jacob.
No, please go ahead, man.
The advantage, I've forgotten this in our report just now, one of the advantages that makes this doable, aside from the return for the investor, the property owner, is that extensive property there are only 4 property owners. 2 of them own about 80% of all that land. The 2 property owners are the county and Kimco. Kimco owns all First Watch and Kimco owns all of the Giant property and all that outcropping. So that makes it much easier to come to some kind of negotiated arrangement because you only have 2 major property owners. So I'm sorry, I forgot that part.
No, I mean, that's a good tidbit to add. That makes it easier when you're going into sort of trying to get people together to make that project happen. So that's perfect. I think that's really great to focus on long-term wise, Mel, and I really appreciate you sharing that and getting that details. So with the Economic Vitalities Group, that first goal was still art-based, if I understand you correctly.
Well, you're muted.
Sorry.
No,
I don't
no,
want
you're
to say
fine.
anything inappropriate. I don't want to say inappropriate.
No.
People. But at any rate, yeah, the 1F, G, and H focuses on artwork, and it also calls attention to what the action plan calls attention to, special consideration for artwork at the Armory.
Okay.
And we have some specific recommendations regarding what kind of artwork, how much, et cetera, et cetera.
Before we move on, I just would like to clarify one thing. So when you talk about this, the alley and the walkway, I'm sure I know what's listed in 9F, but it was along the Folly line, but it was just a walkway. I just want to clarify that.
Well, it's under economic development, and it's development opportunity sites, Josephine. It's an opportunity site. It's not an opportunity to develop a walkway. It's an opportunity to develop increased commercial activity in the Pikesville corridor.
Okay. So just want to, we are hearing all the ideas. I'm just trying to see
That's the
what
clarification.
action plan, what can be short term, and with the money we have, what can be done. So I was just looking at 9F. I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, if you spoke of the money, thank you very much for that, Josephine. That's an important distinction. But as far as money is concerned, certainly the county has within its ability and maybe within these funds to fund maybe a graphic design of what that corridor, that walkway might look like, so that you have something to pitch graphically to potential investors so that they can see what they're getting. So that's maybe where the funding could come in at this particular short-term phase of getting some kind of graphic design and some kind of description of what that walkway might be like.
Okay, just I hear that all those interesting ideas. So when we talk about funding, we should talk. That's the thing when we had with the state application too. What we decided. So getting more funding also comes with who's going to manage that, and all that is something I would say long term. With what we have, small projects, what we can address would be the short term. So I'm just telling.
I won't belabor it, Josephine, but the short term is the design, so to speak, lacking any professional design, but the county has design people that can lay out a graphic design of what that walkway looks like. So that may be a short-term effort using some money. I would guess that $10,000, for example, might satisfy creating that kind of sketch, that kind of graphic presentation, and that might be the first step.
Yeah,
as a short term.
Definitely good first step on that to get that long-term goal. Now I see Kristen, Neville, Larry, Ruth, who I don't know, either one of you guys can begin. I don't know. Kristen, go right ahead if you like.
I'll be quick. I just wanted to clarify where Foley Lane is. So I'm looking at the map. It starts at Sudbrook and goes behind, like a question.
No. Okay. Try Walker Avenue.
Okay.
Walker Avenue to the back of the back of First Watch.
Okay, so you're going behind like the Advanced Auto Parts.
And if you look at Foley Lane, then go, for lack of a better word, south of Walker, that corresponds to a alley that runs from Walker to the library parking lot. And on its Reisterstown Road side of that alley is a Revenue Authority county parking lot.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
that entire expanse is what I'm looking at. And I'd love to walk anybody along it. It's remarkable.
Mel, I
Remarkable.
might have to take you up on that so I get a better idea for it. Kristen, do you have
Looking
any other
forward to it.
comments on that?
No. That's pretty much it. Thanks.
Could you
Thanks,
clarify?
Kristen.
And all right, Ruth or Neville, Larry, I'll get you because I just saw they were unmuted here.
Okay.
Ruth or Neville, who wants to go on that?
I gather, that for the people who this is a relatively fresh concept. And obviously this is long-term. Mel would like to see it adopted. And in order to do that, you have to start planning. But people, my understanding is that and I favor this, but people need to understand that this is predicated on the library and senior center being vacated, moving to the Armory, the property being sold to a private developer, but from the county to a private developer, and that would generate a lot of the funding to get this sort of thing going. And it would go from the state police courtyard, which is just south of the library, and there would be a parking structure probably there, either underground or elevated, and the library and senior center would not be there. That's how you find the space to do this, and it would be lined with commercial, bistro, bookshop, flower stall, blah, 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 cool, fun, funky businesses on either side. So you have this great pedestrian walkway. But that's what, if you're picturing this, you need to realize that the library and senior center are no longer there functioning like that.
Thank you, Ruth. Can I just, Jacob, just.
Yeah, I appreciate all your comments, Mel. I've just got Neville here. I've got his hand up. I got Larry.
Try
as
to
well.
get back to me if you can. Ruth, thank you very much for that. That was
Yes,
great
sir.
summation.
I appreciate all that comments. And Ruth, thank you for that clarification, sort of build on a hypothetical there.
So
Neville.
you can envision,
Thank you.
what we're talking about.
Okay. Neville,
Okay, I'd like to follow up on this walkway that Mel has talked about. And that leads me to the infrastructure committee. If you have a walkway on the northeast side of Reisterstown Road, you've got a little bit of a dilemma that pedestrians still have to cross the road to be able to reach the southwest side of Reisterstown Road. So the ability to cross the road is the third of the 3 points that we're working with SHA. And the crossing of the road at the moment is a challenge, largely because it's a two-way street, so you've got to cross 2 lanes of traffic. You also have a situation in which basically pedestrians do not cross where you would like them to cross. They cross haphazardly in different locations. So in this proposal that we have, it is to have a traffic island in the middle of the road to give pedestrians the opportunity to only cross 1 lane at a time. And we are planning to have walkways every 100 feet and bushes to prevent pedestrians from crossing except at the walkways. So we think that pedestrians would be willing to walk 100 feet out of their way, or actually 50 feet out of their way. And this is something that we discussed with the SHA. And so, if I may, I'd like to just take a couple of minutes to discuss the meeting that we had with SHA on June the 16th, which was a Thursday last. It was about 10 days ago. It was a very productive meeting. And we had at that time Wendy Walcott, who was the district engineer. We had her assistant, who was Sutapa Samanta. And we had some other people. I'll go through it. So we've got Denise McGee, a design engineer. And from our side, we had a representative from Delegate Lisa Belcastro, and that was Tyler Hagan. And then Carlos Gonzalez represented Izzy Patoka. And then Jacob represented the planning office. So I think we had an interesting cross-section of representative views at this meeting. Meeting went on for almost 2 hours. We discussed it in detail. We also laid out the drawing that our committee had prepared for this meeting. Actually, it was prepared quite a few months ago. But at all events, what we are showing in the drawing is how it is indeed possible within a section. We sampled a piece of Reisterstown Road, and that's about 1/3 of the mile length between Old Court Road and Slade Avenue. And we showed that within this area, we could actually get crosswalks approximately every 100 feet. We could have access to the parking lots. We could have access to just about anybody who needed to, and yet we would afford safe pedestrian crossings. And the bushes, hopefully flowering bushes, would also add to the decor of Reisterstown Road. So that was the third item that was discussed. The first item was discussed was the no left turns. And the plan there is to add a 5th lane at the traffic lights. And that was received quite well, but all of this is going to require some study. The second item is the removal of the power lines. And of course, for that, we'll need to involve not just BG&E, but also the communications people, Verizon, and everybody else who's involved in this. So these are the 3 items that we discussed. And they said that they would try to get a timeline prepared in time for this meeting today. Unfortunately, as it turned out, Wendy Walcott has retired. Today was her last day on the job. And so things are a little bit chaotic at the present time. So they were not able to come up with the timeline for today's meeting. They are asking for another 4 weeks, which would basically take us to the next meeting. So at that time, we hopefully will have the timeline on the 3 proposals that I mentioned, and I'll have more information for you at that time. Thank you.
No, thank you so much for sharing that. That was a good recap, and congrats to Wendy.
Jacob, just clarification. Neville, of course, has chaired the infrastructure committee quite ably, and certainly the plan that he discussed with us just now and the plan that he presented to the State Highways Administration, et cetera, was one at which the 1,000 Friends had already approved and encouraged Neville to keep going forward. He's done a miraculous job. So the 3 items that Neville points out are certainly critical. I would like to clarify something. I don't know if Neville has conflated a couple of things, but Neville, the walkway.
No, I'm gonna Mel, if you don't mind, I'm gonna kind of get you there because we've got his sort of points already.
That's the walkway. It's about the
appreciate
walkway. His
clarification
predicate.
on that. I know Larry's got something to say.
His predicate on the walkway is critical. His predicate on the walkway was
with that, definitely.
It's parallel. Neville, it's parallel to Reisterstown Road. It doesn't cross it.
Oh, no, exactly. No, but it's.
You were saying it crosses it.
But in order to get to the other side of Reisterstown Road, Mel, they're going to
has nothing to do with the walkway. That's the whole idea, is to get people off Reisterstown Road. All right.
Well, but you know, you can't basically say we're going to have wonderful walkways for the shops that are on the northeast side of Reisterstown Road and deny access to the people.
Doesn't deny access. Doesn't deny access.
It's also
they have to compete.
It's a pretty large project that you can't do for 130,000 as well.
Oh no.
But you can do the design phase. Or
definitely get some sort of ideas thrown out there. But Larry, I know you've had been patiently waiting.
Jacob.
What comment, question, something you had to throw out there?
Thank you. Just briefly, I'm going to put my Pikesville Armory Foundation hat on just for a moment. In terms of 1F, exploring activation of the Armory frontage for outdoor activities. Just a reminder that, Pikesville Armory Foundation is responsible for assuming control of and managing the Armory redevelopment, which includes activation of Armory frontage. And we're really happy and open to any recommendations, especially since 3 of the Pikesville Armory Foundation board members are on the PRAP. So we're recommending and sharing with ourselves as well as the rest of the committee. But the Pikesville Armory Foundation is going to be, determining the final priorities and projects for the Armory. And we already have right of entry from the military. For those of you that don't know, we're moving forward with acquisition. Plans are moving forward for redevelopment of the NCO Club and Armory Park in the back portion of the property. And the county specifically charged the Armory Foundation with serving as the single point of contact for the Armory redevelopment. So we're very excited to be, working with the PRAP, and we're part of the PRAP. But at the end of the day, the Armory Foundation has plans laid out for sort of where we're going with the different projects.
That rightfully should, Larry. It seems like a large enough project to get that special attention. Now, Jaron, I see you got your hand up here as well. I'm gonna see you out there on the bike. I meant to tell you that. I'm gonna be biking all around with you, man.
I hope so. I'm assuming you guys can hear me.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. I just want to throw out an idea because it seems like there's a lot of discussion about like where to put walking and pedestrian infrastructure. I think it might be worth revisiting the idea. And I'm going to say this knowing that it's probably going to ruffle some feathers, but I think maybe it's worth revisiting the idea of closing a lane of Reisterstown Road. I know that seems maybe drastic, but the other ideas that I'm hearing thrown out are like moving an entire senior center and a library. And I feel like that's going to take a lot of work. We're talking about trying to repave or rework infrastructure. And it all just seems like a ton of work just to avoid the idea of maybe closing down a lane of traffic. But hear me out. If we do, it's not like we would be blocking traffic in both directions, right? We would obviously need some sort of a study to be done on how much of traffic volume comes into and out of Reisterstown Road. It would only be for a single corridor, and I think it should be closed in an area that allows traffic to go around. For instance, if we close what I think might be Old Court Road, right? It's right by the police barracks, right? If we close one lane there, so you'd still have, like, let's assume we close one of the 2 northbound lanes. You'd still have a lane that is allowed to travel northbound, right? You'd still have cars that drive. Anybody who doesn't want to go through that and feels that that's too slow could then take Old Court Road and head to the Beltway on Park Heights, or they could continue forward slowly until they pass the single lane restriction. Obviously, it would only be in one direction, but this would buy us an entire lane's width of pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, and that's wide enough to have a path that goes in both directions, and probably wide enough if you include the sidewalk to have a cycle path, a cycle lane, or really it'd be a multi-use path. So basically you'd have cyclists, or really it's micro mobility, because you have to factor in like e-scooters and e-bikes and everything. It's not just bikes, right? Strollers and all that stuff. But if you build a protected bike lane on Reisterstown Road, then we don't have to redesign the entire town to accommodate for this. So we don't have to think about moving this infrastructure to behind businesses and bulldozing stuff. Like, it all sounds to me like so much work just to make sure that cars still have so much priority down Reisterstown Road. And I just feel like maybe cars shouldn't have so much priority. Let them go take Park Heights. Let them, go down DeRizio like DeRizio was originally intended for, or find a path around, Park Heights or Old Court or something. I mean, there's other places for cars to go, and it's not like we'd be closing the street off entirely. So I just think it's worth revisiting the idea.
Thank you, Jaron. All right, Mel, I'll get you one more here. What's going on?
Okay, so that's Jaron,
yeah.
I'm not going to ask you your background, but that's remarkable. So picture this, Bethesda. What they've accomplished is they've narrowed the scale of everything. So while the state highways and almost every traffic engineer I've ever come across, their main goal is to get you as expeditiously from point A to point B. With regards to redevelopment of suburban urban areas, slow everything down, narrow the scale, which you could theoretically do, and I don't know the dimensions, but you could theoretically close that lane somewhere, maybe accommodate some left turns, but in addition, you might be able to increase development opportunities along Reisterstown Road, which now addresses what Neville just alluded to regarding competition. So with this Pikes Peak Promenade, you might be encouraging development to go along that pedestrian park boulevard from the library on through to the Giant, parallel to Reisterstown Road. If you then also narrowed that Reisterstown Road down, you can have development opportunity along that side of Reisterstown Road.
I'll
You really got something.
I'll throw one other idea out there. Sorry, I think I'm getting some background noise, but we could run a pilot program, right? You could temporarily close the road and make you could, you know, do like a marketing program and just promote the idea and say, hey, you know, this Sunday at the, you know, beginning of September, we're closing down one lane and opening it up to, you know, bikes and, you know, promote the idea. And basically, if have you ever wanted to walk down Reisterstown Road? Now's your chance, right? I don't know, whatever the marketing idea is, but you do temporary barriers and see who shows up, and then collect some feedback and see if people like the idea. And if everyone hates it and everybody flips out, you just collect the barriers and it's back to normal. And if everybody loves it, then you do it again, and then you do it again until it's permanent.
Now, what do you
Yeah, you're
think?
thinking, Jaron. So
Yeah.
Michelle or Kristen, I don't know, or Barry. I've got Barry too. I don't know if
Michelle, you can go, or Barry. I'll go after you guys.
You want me to go? This is Barry.
Barry, go right ahead, sir.
Sure. I think Jaron's ideas are I think the proposing the what we've talked what putting some new pathway back there. From a real estate perspective, most businesses want front-loaded parking.
I got it.
And to take away the minimal parking that we have, which I think is
No, it
horrible.
doesn't do that. No, my proposal doesn't do that, Barry.
Shut up!
So
Let the man talk.
So if you
Thank you, Tom.
so with taking away a lane on Reisterstown Road, which I think is an excellent idea, you're going to get the businesses that are currently there that have metered parking. They're very upset, and I don't know how to overcome that. I think one of the things what we should be doing is looking how to relocate or putting money into moving businesses to create front-loaded parking and redeveloping the landscape along or motivating landlords to redo the buildings, these old broken buildings with beauty shops and beauty shops and beauty shops, if you get the idea, all along Reisterstown Road to other types of businesses. And the reason other types of businesses aren't there, one of the reasons, is because of the parking situation. I think that's what we really need to start focusing on, is how to create a friendly retail environment for the corridor, and then that in itself will bring the traffic or the pedestrian traffic, etc., that you're looking for. I think that's one of the biggest problems. And whoever mentioned before, we talked about that left-hand turn thing. It's a simple thing. And I'm sorry that the state highway, they really should be part of this meeting. But, you know, all we need is certain signs saying go to Derizio to make your left, or it's a simple thing to fix. I mean, my office is on Church Lane, and it's really problematic for people coming there that can't make a left-hand turn. They have to figure it out. And ultimately, everybody does figure it out. But I think that's really what we should try to put some focus in, on how to better the landscape we currently have already on Reisterstown Road, kind of along what Jaron is saying. I think just refining that in a way that, you know, everybody wins.
Barry, I think that's admirable as well, and I think that's what Kristen has kind of hit on with from streetscape and design is getting it more friendly retail wise with different signs and the art coming to that way, and landscaping where it's more easy to access. Is that what you're going to throw in there, Kristen? I don't want to.
No, I mean,
Tom,
that's
I'll get you.
absolutely true. That that would solve that issue that Barry was talking about. That's all the wayfinding would definitely point you towards the Derizio and things like that. I was just going to comment on Jaron. So I think if I recall correctly, what we have now is 1 lane southbound and Town Road, 2 lanes northbound, and then a parking lane. So could we do like, maybe 3 lanes, like one way, one the other way, and one for a turn lane? Or you're thinking take out a whole lane altogether?
So, I know that the idea of removing the parking is super contentious, but I just want to point out that parallel parking is like the least efficient way to put cars in a place. It takes up a colossal amount of space. So I know the business owners are fighting to keep those spaces, but the most cars you can get in front of any one business is 2 to 3 cars at most. And more often you'll see cars taking up a spot which closes down the entire lane of travel, but it might be like 1 or 2 cars for the entire row of businesses. Right. So what the businesses really need is a way to address peak visiting hours, right? It's just when they are expecting a lot of people to show up. But even then, how many parked cars can you get if you're parking along the side of the road? So in my opinion, give an alternative to accommodate the same number of spots. It shouldn't be hard. I've said it before, but I think we really need a parking structure. If you can bring foot traffic into the area through, a bike lane or a long walkway, or, give people a place to park and then walk around, you're going to get so much more traffic than 3 cars at a time. You're going to get people walking by your business that otherwise wouldn't have stopped at all. So, I know that there is some contention around this, but ultimately this is how you make an area thrive economically, is you got to bring people in. You got to give some attraction for somebody to stop at your business who wouldn't otherwise be there. What you have now is a bunch of businesses that people drive to, go to that one business, and then leave. I've lived here my whole life. Like, this is the only reason I ever go to downtown Pikesville, is I already know I'm going to Staples, or I'm going to, a bakery, or wherever it is. I drive there, I get what I need, and I leave. I never stick around, right? And if you want to change that, you have to give some sort of an attraction, some reason for people to be there, and you need to give space for them to move around and walk around and, spend time there. So parked cars, it's just a crazy waste of space, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, there's so many pilot programs that we could model off of for like shutting down Town Road, like as a test.
Yep.
JFX, Charles Street, they make it all promenades every once in a while. We've tons of stuff.
You can count the number of spaces. It's probably at most 24, right? 24 spaces. We can find a place to add 24 spaces for parked cars, and then take that parking lane out and make it a multi-use lane. Or we could do, if that doesn't work, we could do 1 lane northbound, 1 lane southbound, and a center turn lane is an option. There's plenty of designs. It doesn't have to be 2 lanes in each direction and then no place to walk or bike. That's an inefficient use of space.
Great ideas on that part, Darren, of using that and sort of solving those problems, because businesses, you just drive right by, honestly. And Tom, I see your hand up here.
Yeah, I'm going to be very quick. Number one, my apologies. I burst out because we're talking over each other, and we need to stop that. I think I am not a great fan of bike lanes, but that's a separate point here. But I like one point what Jaron said that I think makes a great deal of sense. I think we can absolutely have a trial Sunday shutdown of Reisterstown Road, of 1 lane or 2 lanes of Reisterstown Road, and it with a quasi festival event that you actually plan food trucks, small businesses, artists and benches or whatever, and actually create a festival that on every other Sunday or 1 Sunday a month, Reisterstown Road does become a destination and a walkway. And on a Sunday, there is sufficient parking in the back areas that you could run that. You could actually park them up at the Target and run a shuttle down there and get people to do that. I don't think it would cost a great deal of money. I don't think it would cost a great deal of anything other than to get people down into Pikesville and get people interested in going down there for something other than going to get a box of pens at Staples. I was listening.
We'll take anybody we can get down there. Michelle, I saw you had your hand there.
Yeah, I just wanted to do sort of a time check, and since it's 7:50, and just to clarify, as you guys know me pretty well now, usually I'm always like process. So like a lot of these conversations are really productive and really great, but I think we sometimes need to focus like what is more appropriate for a subcommittee. That a lot of us have already talked about some of these things and have gone through the subcommittee process, and hoping that these monthly oversight committees are certainly a chance to banter back and forth and give, feedback, but that we sort of, had outlined, I think, tonight for the subcommittees to report out their two priorities. The Oversight Committee had talked about, a process for developing a budget, categorizing short-term and long-term, and possibly, putting forth recommendations for these short-term projects to move on for the funding. So I just was hoping to sort of wrap us up a little bit, close out and see, where we're going to go for next steps. Because like I said, so the comments are really interesting and the ideas are so great. But like I said, some of these should be, really subcommittee discussions. And some of them already have. And so just, that was sort of my comment, was just seeing that it's almost 7:50, just to try and see, about closing and wrapping up and outlining next steps.
Oh, Michelle, that was beautiful. Thank you.
If I could add a comment at this point.
Go right ahead, Neville.
Okay. I'm just wondering, some interesting ideas have come up, and a suggestion that SHA should be part of this meeting. I was hoping that we would have some input from SHA for tonight's meeting, and that turned out not to be the case, but hopefully it will be next meeting. Would you like me to ask SHA to participate in this discussion, or just after we come up with some ideas?
Definitely, if anything, I might be happy to reach out to him as well. I mean, I think really before we all leave, we need to decide, or I guess the committee here needs to decide on something to going forth. And from what I can see of sort of a consensus among all these subcommittees is an art sort of mural landscape. And I think that's really a good direction, is locations of where we would need signs and where art would be appropriate. That's sort of me just kind of thinking about that. I don't know, you guys might have different opinions, of course, but I think one step here on going forward, so that way we have something that we've done for the next meeting. I don't know if anybody's in agreement there, but I think that's where I'm heading. Larry, I see you got your hand there.
Larry, you're
the Spruce Up Grant. I know you're muted now, Larry. I know Spruce Up Grant might be perfect sort of segue into that.
Well, my question was, since branding, marketing, planning around that is part of the PrAP, should that be looked at before we start investing in art? Because eventually I think we want the public art to be consistent with the branding and marketing for Pikesville.
Wait a minute.
Who's talking?
I'm not too sure, but I'm just going to go ahead and say, I mean, I think that's fair, valid point, Larry. Mel, I see you got your hand up. What can I help?
No, we don't have anything to market. And the marketing committee is going to be a critical element of this going forward. We don't have anything to market. I think what I've heard, and Jacob, you're pretty close, if I could.
Please.
Maybe the priorities that this oversight committee might agree to pursue is what I'm hearing. A commonality is, as you said, art, and that takes in 1F, 1G, 1H with streetscaping goal number 2. And the third item is the report by Neville and his work. What I would suggest perhaps as a next step, first of all, let's agree to that, as those are the 3 goals at this stage. And secondly, to empower Neville to use the Oversight Committee's portfolio to approach the State Highways Administration, to invite them, and with you, Jacob, and with anybody else in the county, to invite the state highways to be at our next meeting and participate in a little discussion, particularly focused on the infrastructure stuff about the roads, including what Jared has suggested. It's quite unique.
I don't think that, I'm not sure if that's what this meeting is for is, you know, to have another agency come in. And I don't know what the expected next steps were. I think we should find out from Jacob what the expectation is for what we want to accomplish at the next meeting before we talk about inviting the SHA to come to that meeting.
Well, Ruth, thank you. I mean, pressure's not really on me. It's on everyone. It's really whatever we want as a group to get the action plan. But we do have these steps here, and from what I've understood coming in, it's something that we can all agree on short term to get something done with the funds that we have. Seems like design and streetscape has, Chris and I appreciate you just knocking out of the park and using those sort of tentative guidelines I had and saying, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to identify. And I think bringing SHA in is great for infrastructure meetings. Like, I don't really know if they need to be involved with the whole oversight committee here. I mean, I'm sure their input, it would be valuable. But for right now, I just want to make sure that we have something to do in the meantime as a group that we can all agree on, that something that's going to make Pikesville better. That's relating back to the action plan. And from what I see, it seems art is the big thing that everybody can kind of tie into in some way or another, whether it's the businesses or just pedestrians in general, like that can get a big community involvement. So I don't want to push any of my ideas on you guys. Just from what I'm seeing, it seems like art is something that we can all kind of do.
Jacob, the reason you're hearing art from so many of us is because this is just background in case you're probably already filled in to this level, but you know, the whole long-term goal is, one of them is for Pikesville to be designated as an arts district and for the Armory to have a very strong, you know, public art orientation. So and we have an art, Thousand Friends of Pikesville, we have an arts committee. We've been studying what's the best public art project to bring to the Reisterstown Road corridor. We looked at painted utility boxes and agreed that there were too many permissions involved, and it involves the State Highway Administration. So we settled on a mural as something that would be feasible and doable. So you're hearing art from a bunch of different people who have, I mean, that is our orientation for Pikesville, to have that identity, that branding as an art destination. So I just thought I should throw that out there.
Yeah, Ruth, I appreciate that sort of history behind that. And I think that's great to have art there, because that is something that, one, we can do in the short term. Two, it's relatively cheap compared to most projects.
Yes,
and
it is. It's not infrastructure, really.
Yeah, and it's something that I think can engage a lot of people as well too. I mean, art seems to be hitting the three sort of key things where I'm like, can be done relatively short, pretty cheap, and we're not going to make anybody unhappy unless it's some objectionable, questionable art. Like, it seems to be like something that we can do. We can have a tangible product relatively quickly that everyone's happy with, which is really hard to do, but I think that's something to focus on next. But Mel, I see your hand up here.
Yeah. No, I think summarization, you've hit it, just identified. Coordinating what has been said as consensus that you've just identified, that identifies 1F, 1G, 1H, and goal 2 as the two goals. That was what our charge was to accomplish tonight, is to identify 2, perhaps 3 goals that this oversight committee would agree to pursue as kind of priorities. How we do it, what we do, that's a different question. But I think we've come to a consensus that 1F, 1G, 1H, and goal 2 are the goals that we should pursue. So we've had a great discussion. I mean, a lot of participation.
Just
Well, I don't really know if it was more
that,
there. I see your hand up there. You got something. I don't really know if it was more armory focused with those particular goals. I think it was more just.
Well, the two of it, 1F, 1G, 1H, and it does call for the Armory, it says in the legislation, the Armory should be explored and given special consideration with regards to those art projects.
Yes, but we're not, but the things that we're talking about using this 130,000 for in the next 12 months or something are not Armory based. The Armory is not available for that kind of thing. We're talking about the rights. My understanding is that for this short term, for this small amount of money, to me, this is, relatively small amount of money. We're talking about things we can do that will make a significant impact in the commercial corridor, not necessarily on the Armory campus. They're already doing their own thing.
Right. I guess Michelle, Jacob, and I talked about this. So the next steps for the next meeting, your exercise, you guys have been doing really good. For every month you meet a subcommittee, you do your homework. I'm really proud of you all. We discussed about this, like, so what's next? So we did talk about this internally. So like each subcommittee has identified 2 or 3 projects. So 2 projects, if I remember correctly, or there are 3 too. So it is more than 10 projects. So you subcommittees should come together before the next meeting and have like top 3 projects from the narrowed down projects, because we might have a long list, but we have to identify the top 3 with the money we have. Small steps, what we can do. That
I'm
get a lot of interesting ideas from everyone. It's all great ideas. I'm just trying to see, we as a planning and OCE are trying to see what we can implement to see. So the top 3 projects, if the subcommittees can work together and come before the next meeting. And Larry has also suggested that being the organization committee, he can work with different subcommittees to identify the top priority projects from the list which you already have. So you did the big list from the whole action plan. You guys narrowed down to 10 to 15 projects. Now, the next step would be to come up with the top 3 so that we know, okay, this is the money left. This is the first thing we can do. And then we can talk about getting more funding. What's the priority for other entities and how other entities can work with that. That is all great. But what's the top 3 which we can do now? So that's something we should be focusing to keep the ball rolling. So just want to let you know that. Yeah.
Thank you, Josephine. I would even say that's perfect. I don't know if there's anything else on top of that, but that's a good way to end it, as in priorities. One thing, and I always just say what one thing we can get done. Anything, just any little baby step to turn into big steps. That's sort of kind of my motto there. So I like that, Josephine. I don't know if anybody comments anything else, but I think that's a good wrap, is to figure out those 2 to 3 out of everyone for the entire group on what to focus on.
So what you're saying is the subcommittee should come back at the next overall oversight committee with specific action items. Is that accurate?
No.
No, please. That's what I just
I
heard.
was going to ask Jacob actually to synopsize it in writing after the meeting. Maybe you can put what our task is for the next oversight committee meeting in writing, so we're all on the same page. I understood Josephine to say that each subcommittee will listen to the 10 things that were proposed, maybe, and maybe Jacob, you can list them, what the proposals were, and then each subcommittee will, I guess, take a vote and come back at our next meeting to say, we liked infrastructure's idea for studying less turn lanes, and we like streetscapes idea for murals, and maybe one other. So
yeah, I'm happy to do that, Ruth. I mean, that's
is
actually
that what you
perfect.
were?
I'll be happy to send it out and just say who. I guess with that synopsis, here are the priorities. You guys sort of vote, and we'll go from there. I think that is perfect, Ruth, on that end of it.
I mean, did I understand it correctly?
I think you got it in the head.
That's okay. Good going, Ruth. That's pretty much what I said.
And thank you for that as well, Mel. I mean, thank you for everybody for even being here. I mean, and one thing, I guess, even so, one final bit of business. So next meeting would be July 25th. We can meet in August if you guys don't want to do July. That's another thing I can put out with that letter. I'm going to put that out there with the sort of brief summary. If you want to meet, then let me know. And if you don't, I'll push it to August and we can go from there. If that's all right with everybody.
Or if we want to, if we can skip August, if people are going to be on vacation or anything, if you prefer, then we can do after July, we can meet in September. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever's easier for vacations or anything like that.
I'm okay right now with July 25th.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Stay with the schedule.
Okay.
Thank
Seems I'm not hearing any real negative. So July 25th, I'll expect to be back no matter what we're doing, and hopefully it'll be a little more focused and not
Look
so
forward to
slow.
hearing from you, Jacob. Thank you. Very good job.
Oh, thank you guys. I appreciate the participation. This is great. And if you have anything, reach out. If I missed anything, let me know. And thank you for not beating me up too much, guys. Took it pretty easy on me.
Thank you, Jacob.
Thank
Okay.
you guys.
Take care, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Everyone, thanks.
Night.